Hello, my name is Augustine Zambrano, and today I'll be talking about creating podcasts, what it takes, and what it takes to create a successful podcast. So, with the last decade, there's been a rise in podcasts and just a different way of getting information. So, now there's more platforms, more accessibility. So, to me, it was very crucial to kind of investigate this and just see how you do it, how do you form it, what it stems from, and yeah, now you can not only get podcasts that are just entertainment based, but informational, a lot of knowledgeable things, technological things, news. So like a person like me who likes to always be on the go can not only listen to music, but now I can listen to podcasts. So this presentation will be divided into four sections, and these are the four main things, main points that I think are essential to creating a good podcast. First, and I think the most important, is the content. Depending on what you want your podcast to be about, I recommend on obviously make sure it's a topic or something that you feel comfortable discussing. So in moments of ambiguity, you're able to kind of speak on it, or you have to be passionate about it. At the end of the day, it has to be important for you and has to be something that you're passionate about. So you could obviously portray that. I think a lot of the good things about podcasts is the long forms of conversation and how much people actually feel related to the conversation. Second, I think the branding is really crucial. Just like anything, a TV show, a brand, a clothing brand, the name has to roll off the tongue, as well as how it looks. Is it a short, long podcast? Um, does it look like a good time? Whatever it is, you have to make sure you put it out there, and you have to make sure you are targeting your segment. Whatever that is. I can't be putting a I can't be making a podcast about techie stuff and computers and expect someone who's completely into sports to enjoy that podcast. Or if I am, then I better find a way to make it fit to that person as well. So you want to make sure that when you put out your podcast or whatever it is, the content has to definitely fit your target. The third thing are the platforms. There's multiple ways of putting it. I personally think it's more about building something bigger than just the podcast. So, for my taste, I personally believe that you should be putting podcasts in accessible places like SoundCloud. I know I have an iTunes account, a subscription, and you get a subscription, and there's an actual podcast app. So I know you don't need a subscription for that. But like I said, it's about getting the word out and people hearing it and maybe possibly turning it into something else. But obviously, you're not going to be able to get to that step if you don't have enough listeners or enough people that are involved. So, and I also just think it's so powerful and there's so much good information out there that I just think it's good for the world in general. You should be able to access this information, especially with the internet. And the last one, and also I think is very important, kind of the structure of your podcast, as well as if you want to have guests or you want to interview people, whatever the case is. But specifically for what I'm trying to tailor, which would be a podcast where you interview people, right? Whether that is athletes, whether that is entertainers, whether that is professors, whatever the case is, I think it's very important to know that it's a sort of an interview, or just like you have to have a sort of conversation dynamic. Um, you have to be more of a listener. It's more about teaching, and you at times you might have to sit on the sidelines. I've been part of certain podcasts where maybe like the person in charge of it has definitely been over talkative or not, and it doesn't turn into kind of like, oh, what can this person offer who I'm interviewing, and more of a, oh, I just want to talk, and that's not the point. The biggest point of the podcast is, in general, to get the content out of whatever it is you're talking about. So if that is what you want to do, which is just talk about nonsense and just like kind of like ramble, then sure. But in any other case, if I'm interviewing a professor, if I'm interviewing having a podcast about sports, it definitely is something where you want to get insight. I think that's also very key. The insights that you get from these professors, the insights that you get from these athletes. With that being said, yes, those are the main four components that I think are key for creating a successful podcast. So, good content and knowing who you're targeting, good branding, and making sure that the brand fits you and the brand fits the people you're targeting. Platforms, make sure you get them to free platforms. I personally think is the best. So it would be YouTube, SoundCloud, the App Store, and iTunes. And last but not least, if you plan on making a podcast where it involves conversations or just uh, interview type podcast, you should make sure that the structure is well formatted and it's a good dynamic for conversation, a good dynamic for your listeners, and yep, that's about it.